children then have two parents who don't put them in the middle, but in fact are double teaming kids. And I think double teaming kids is always necessary. I used to think that it takes probably 3 parents to raise children. And so if you have 2 parents that are really working together, their children are less likely to drive a truck in between them and kind of do whatever they want to do instead of what the parents know is in their best interest.
Marie, that's your experience also, or anything you want to add to that?
I think that the whole idea of co-parenting after divorce is really extremely important. And I totally agree with what Mary's saying, that you have a long time to be parents even after you're divorced. And mediation is a very valuable tool for families that have trouble after they're divorced. And I have had many clients over the years who come in for a tune-up every few years. You know, the plan that they created when their child was 5, it's not developmentally appropriate when their child's 10. And so they really are using the process to help them all the way along the way, so they know they have a place to go. They don't have to go to court.
Oh, you raised an interesting issue, though. I think people sometimes think once they get divorced, they're sort of locked into one way of doing it. How flexible is this divorce process and divorce results?
I think that the co-parenting after divorce can be very flexible, and I've seen amazing things happen over the years with families who use the process appropriately. They know they need a third person to help them figure out what's going to happen to their kids, and they're able to do that.
And what I often say to people is, if you tell me what your goal is, I'll help you figure out a way of getting there. And I think that's the creative part of mediation, that couples come to us and say, this is what we're trying to achieve, and if what they're trying to achieve is healthy children, we will help them achieve that by asking them what's worked in the past for them, you know, for their family, as opposed to in litigation where you come up with something that a judge deems appropriate, which may have no relationship to how the children have been parented before. And I remember you had a very strange case in which somebody wanted to move, and they had come up with some kind of formula for how many days or weeks the child was going to spend with each parent, and the other parent didn't like that, and so they went before a judge, and the judge came up with something that was totally absurd.
No one wanted
it. I can't remember.
But I always thought that was sort of intentional on the judge's part, is that she said something that was so outrageous that it forced the couples to, it was an interesting technique to force the couples to say, this is crazy, I don't want to do this, we'll come up with our own solution. I had a slightly senior moment back there a second ago when I was talking about impartiality, and I wanted to go into the other question, which I just realized now what I wanted to say, was, is this a confidential process?
Absolutely. By Arizona law, mediation is absolutely confidential, and that's another reason that people choose mediation, because it is confidential and they can maintain control over the process.
That's good. Can you give some example also of how we were talking a little bit about, I'm now jumping around a little bit, but on the cost factor, going back to that, is how does the couple decide who's paying for this?
That's often the first mediation issue. Couples come in and I'll ask them, how do you want to pay for this, once they've decided that they want to do mediation. And if they aren't sure, and some couples haven't worked it out in advance, some couples have decided in advance, we'll discuss that. And that becomes the first test of whether they're going to be able to mediate successfully, is whether they can reach a decision as to how to handle the fee.
And in Arizona, most people still have community property when they come to mediation, because they're not divorced yet. So the fee is coming out of their community, which technically
does it have to, or
doesn't have to, but most people only have community, so technically they're each paying for it equally. They can make other arrangements, and sometimes they do, but most people still have a joint bank account when they come to the mediator and just are thinking about their divorce for the first time, and so the fee frequently comes out of that community.
But there's no rules
on
how to do it. One of the things that we hear a lot about in mediation is the issue of power imbalance. And how do you deal with that in a situation where you have a husband or one spouse, I'll be more gender neutral here, one spouse who is very savvy financially, and the other spouse has nothing. I mean, I remember mediating a case years ago where it's sort of the line is that the husband knew everything about earning the money and nothing about spending it, and the wife knew everything about spending the money but nothing about earning it. But how do you deal with that kind of a power imbalance, and how does that affect the mediation?
I think in that case, what I want to make sure as a mediator is that the person who has less knowledge has the ability to consult with someone who can provide them the information that they don't have. That wouldn't be my role to provide them with the information, but I certainly would ask them what they need in order to feel comfortable that they really can discuss their preferences on a particular issue. And so they might consult with a CPA, they might consult with a financial planner, and I think that that helps to level the playing field tremendously. And I, would certainly make sure that in whatever area the playing field is not level, that each person has access to the resources that they need to level the playing field. And I think the one area in which you get into where it's very difficult to do that, if not impossible, is the domestic violence area. And so in mediation, I'm very reluctant to mediate cases in which there's ongoing domestic violence. It's just too dangerous to ask someone to make a decision if they're coerced. And so I'm really not comfortable in those cases and would recommend that people in which there's ongoing violence consider some other model. And perhaps the collaborative law model, is a superior model in that case.
We're beginning to run out of time, and I want to thank you, Marie Piccarreta, and Dr. Mary Marcus for being on our program and discussing divorce mediation. And I want to thank you all for watching Divorce TV, a program dedicated to providing you information about divorce so you can make the right decision about your divorce or your friend's divorce or help you. If you would like more information about our guests, Mary Marcus and Marie Piccarreta, you'll see information concerning their websites and their telephone numbers on the screen. Divorce TV with Wally Marcus.